saying thank you so much to every single one of you for joining us today. I know we have lots of YMCAs and JCCs from across the country, as well as some partners on the line, all in different stages of their Salesforce journey, but here to listen to two incredible individuals from YMCA San Diego on their CRM evaluation. So before we get started, let's chat agenda for today and give a little structure on how the next hour is going to go. So we'll start with just some general housekeeping. Then we'll go to introductions of our panelists, as well as an introduction to who the YMCA of San Diego is and the incredible mission they support in their community. Then we will get to the bulk of today's topic, which is how the YMCA of San Diego went about evaluating a new CRM. And we're really going to touch on everything from the strategy that took place months before their official journey, the why and how they went about starting this, their key factors to consider when choosing not just a new technology, but a new partner, and then some of the tools that they used to support their evaluation and that internal process they went through to get this across the finish line. And then, of course, we will wrap up with some live Q&A. So general housekeeping really quick. So Zoom name, feel free to change it and add the organization you're with. I've got mine here to Traction Rec. That way we know when you're asking questions, what association or JCC you came from. Q&A, happy to answer questions in the chat live as they come in line, or you can save them until the very end. We're going to try and give about 10 minutes to Q&A and you can ask them live. And then last but not least, the webinar will be recorded and then sent out shortly after today. So you can share it around your organization or watch it back like I'll be doing, because I could listen to these two speak all day. Amazing. And hi, Beth. Nice to see you. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to invite two very special individuals to introduce themselves. So I had the pleasure of working closely with this team, and it's been just under a year since the official evaluation kickoff. And I've just been in constant awe of how they approached this journey, the kindness, the transparency, and the partnership that they have graced our team with. And I'm really excited to revisit that point in time today. So with that, John, why don't you kick us off with the first introduction?
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. And good morning, everyone. You know, Stephanie used the word partnership. It's one of my favorite words, because this journey is truly a partnership. So good morning, everyone. I am John Merritt, the CIO for the YMCA here in San Diego. And we are 63 days actually from going live with Traction Rec Salesforce. So it's, as you can imagine, there's a bit of pandemonium going on here in San Diego right now, but it's really an honor to be here with not only all of you, but with my good friend and partner in all of this, Sean Kurth, to share a little bit about our journey. So I will pass it over to Sean.
Yeah, thank you, John and team. It's glorious to be with all of you here today talking about our digital transformation efforts. Our partnership is a word that we will pick up quite a bit, and putting our people first throughout our project and our project work. So proud to be a part of this project. I am the project manager. In addition to that, I support operations and analytics efforts for the YMCA of San Diego County. So really eager to get into this dialogue. John and I before this regularly talk about these topics and kick them around. So we look forward to popcorning this back and forth with you all today.
Yeah, and just real quick, Sean mentioned something that's critical to our project. It's a people project. This is not a technology project, and you're going to hear and see that theme, throughout the dialogue today. We're not driving this from an IT perspective. Now, IT is obviously critical to where you want to go and how you get there as a partner. Back to that partnership word, but this is a people project, and it's why we will be successful.
Totally. Thank you both so much for your introductions, and thank you for being here, considering you are 63 days up from go live and your head is barely above water. So we really appreciate your time. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Stephanie Anderson. I'm the Regional Vice President of Sales at Traction Rec, and my team and I get the pleasure of assisting YMCAs and JCCs and similar organizations in their evaluation of Salesforce and Traction Rec. So thank you all for being here today. Super exciting. Now, let's dive into this CRM journey. Now, to begin, before we start about what ignited the change, do you two mind sharing a little bit more about just YMCA of San Diego in general to lay the groundwork for some folks on the line who may not know too much about your association and the incredible things that you do?
Yeah, Sean, why don't you go ahead and share?
Yeah, I'll take a first pass because as we say in our why a lot, when you've seen one why, you've seen one why, right? So all of us are coming from different lenses, different experiences, associations, even organizations. So a little bit about our why in a nutshell. We're a very large operation. This YMCA typically has an operating budget above 200 million in a pre-COVID state, about 5,000 plus employees. And it seems like 6,000 programs, so lots of different offerings, lots of context behind being agile, trying to be unique, engaging with heavy program presence as well throughout our why. So while we have a very hearty membership portfolio, we also have quite a few programs that have been our bread and butter over the course of the years: childcare, camps, lots of different offerings to serve folks as they need to be served in our community here in San Diego County. So I do want to note, we were large. We were also heavily impacted by COVID in our local community here. So with COVID brought forward a lot of digital transformation efforts and the needs for punctuated change for our team to be agile, to adapt, and to move forward in that light. So while we've been a big battleship for many years, a big battleship is hard sometimes to turn. And so know that you're not alone in that sort of journey and that we have been through some of that together. So John, don't know if there's anything you'd like to add, anything I missed.
Yeah, those are great points, Sean. I think one thing that I like to share about San Diego, and it is unique probably to all Ys across the country, is that we have a very strong culture here in San Diego, a unique culture. We have different pockets of culture, and that's been an interesting hurdle at times, and it's been an asset at times. As we drive our digital transformation, but. San Diego is not unique in that regards, but then again, culture is really unique to each of your locations.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing I sense with working with you all is the diverse groups that you do serve in your community, and all bringing it back to, the culture within your YMCA and the mission and the values that you have inherently. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for laying the groundwork. Okay, let's get to the meat of it. So let's go back in time and talk about timing. We all know that there is never a right time or the perfect time to decide to embark on something like this, right? This is a huge journey. So can you two really talk us through what ignited the need for this change, and really what was that why in regards to why finally do this and make this change? Big question, I know.
No, that's a big question, and that's a critical question. Why make this change? Why change your operating system? Why embark on a journey of digital transformation? And I think that is probably the very first thing for us, is that we didn't view this as a technology swap. We didn't view it as we just needed some new software, because one thing we never wanted to do in this transformation is lead with the solution. So if we go back in time, and I think I mentioned this during the fireside chat, pain motivates change. We were an organization that we just came through a pandemic, like most of all of you have. We needed to change. We needed to deliver service in a new and better way. We needed to leverage technology for our two customers being the internal staff. So they needed solutions that could best do the things we needed them to do as we were growing and changing and kind of regrowing after the pandemic. But then we needed great solutions for our external customer, and out of that really came this need to look at how could we find solutions that would grow as we grew. We knew that the WISE solutions that exist today in kind of the WISE space, that they're kind of built for today, and we really wanted to build for tomorrow. And that said, our organization was also going through change strategically. So a new strategic plan was coming to be. Mission, vision, values are incredibly important, to us, and we needed, to again look for ways to operate our business, and find solutions to do that operation, that would align with mission, vision, and value, and that's kind of what spawned it. So, Sean, I know you've got some thoughts on that too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and you're hitting the nail on the head for me, which is talking about putting our people first. The people are our WHY. It's that simple. Putting our people first and defining that clearly. One thing that kept coming to mind, just to paint the landscape for you all, which you've already seen yourselves likely, is our staff went through so much of a lift through the pandemic. I think at one point our Y was down to about 200 active employees out of this massive population, right? And we were operating heavily manual processes. Our staff were putting this on their back. They were lifting us up and they were pushing us through. They brought us forward. And John, I love that you highlighted our staff first as our internal customer. How can we design systems, technology, tools that show that we love and prioritize their needs as a business? We can talk strategy, we can talk mission, vision, values. If we can show them tangibly that we are putting them first and we are being bold for them in terms of what we would like to reach out and acquire for them as staff, who each and every day are making these impactful changes, are those connection points. How can we not only do this for the team going through COVID, but the people who are harder and harder to reach further and further out in our community as a necessary consequence of something like COVID? How do we make those meaningful connections possible? How do we continue to use tools in partnership, in collaboration? How do we get away from that old school mentality of IT being the centralized function and you get a tool and you do the best you can with it? And how do we say, that's not acceptable moving forward? How do we say moving forward in terms of post-COVID, in terms of what our customers need throughout? How do we settle for what's right for our organization? And I think that's going to be a theme that hopefully comes through today.
Yeah, there's another really cool component of why we're doing what we're doing, and it's a simple but complicated process. And how do you create tech equity? We want to build tech equity, again, not only internally for our team so that they feel empowered to do the work that they want to do where and when they need to do it, but we want to build tech equity for our customer at large, and those all around the county of San Diego, which is a very large county, so that anybody that wants to interact with us, no matter how and where they are, they can do that. I mean, if a youth that happens to be homeless needs to get to our services, how can we have a solution in place that can connect them mobily to where we want to go in the services we want to provide to them? So we were asking a lot of internal questions about, who we want to be, how we want to do the work we do, how we want to bring, stronger, process alignment, how we wanted to actually standardize process, in support of service delivery. So a lot of that was driving change, while we're feeling the pain of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm. So much goodness there. I mean, even just that quote, pain motivates change, from the beginning. I know that was said at the fireside chat. The biggest thing we're seeing in, folks that we're speaking to on a day-to-day is this notion of inertia, right? It's like, maybe the pain isn't great enough, and, they can't identify that pain eloquently enough to say, we need to make a case to make a change, right? And that's a really hard thing to do. But I love that you brought it back to both your staff and your constituents, right? It's, they are tied together, because how your staff feels and the day-to-day work they do is, again, a direct reflection of how your community engages with you, and vice versa, and has a huge effect on them. So
absolutely. Hey, Stephanie, to that point, I just want to highlight, I think for us, we had talked about this sort of change for many years. I think there came a point where we heard and listened to our staff saying that there's a lot of lifting associated with our current state. And so at one point we looked at it and we said, what, how much time do we spend? Well, let's dig deeper. And I would encourage anybody who's listening to consider that as well. Dig deeper, ask those follow-up questions. That instinct, there might be some value to that. And in our case, we found at least 7 figures of inefficiencies in terms of just operating day to day, not even talking about the morale elements, the ROI, the revenue components, but just to operate in current state. How much is it really costing you to operationalize your existing state system? And you may find really wonderful opportunities even in that space.
Sean, that's a great point, because I remember actually writing the business case and putting, if you go back to kind of the pure nuts and bolts of how you change and how you write that business case or design the project. There are so many places where we can save money. And I don't say that because we want to eliminate people. We know in the Y space, there's always a place where we can move people because there's always a need. But we were just so inefficient with the solutions that we had. The other thing that I think is just so critical to remember is that your operational business solutions don't operate in a vacuum. They touch every component of your business, and they're very multidimensional. And having those, being committed, to finding and developing and rolling out a solution that can really, touch all aspects of your business, so that people can do what they need to do is really important.
Oh, completely. I love that. It, the manual process, Sean, like we hear that so much, and sometimes it can be hard to tie that to a dollar amount, right? To be like, oh, this is how much money we're spending on extra staff time, or, whatever that may be, and to try and find those ROIs in that. Because again, we don't want us to talk about dollar amount, but sometimes it comes down to that and making your business case like, hey, we're spending 30 hours doing this task when it should take 20 minutes, right? And finding those inefficiencies and pulling those out to make a broader business case for the change. So that's beautiful.
Sean did amazing analysis against the hours. I mean, Sean went out and watched staff work, analyzed that. I mean, came up with hours calculations. And again, I mean, it's, that isn't the only reason that you change, but that is a strong, supporting pillar of how and why you change.
Yeah.
Dollars better spent in delivering service to the community are way better than being spent on back-end technology or administrative overhead.
Yeah, and I just want to add, thank you for that shout, John. And it's an and not an or, right? It's the power of the and here. So it's not necessarily that you're just finding efficiencies. It's that the people who are in your Y and organization want to be providing meaningful impact in their jobs. And so being able to realign them, and also just fully acknowledging, if you all are anything like us, it's difficult to keep and acquire staff right now, right? So it's not that there's a challenge on finding work for the people we have. It's making sure that that work is as meaningful as possible to keep them for years to come. So I really want to highlight that maybe 10, 20 years ago, you look at an efficiency analysis, and I think in the current landscape, it's more about taking really great care of your staff.
Resourcing and staffing. We'll get into a lot of that for sure. All right. So we identified the need for the change, right? The motivators. So where do you start? So Felicia, do you want to pop back up that slide and we'll talk about the starting line and things to consider. I love the first one. Find your advocates to support the change. Oh, this is instrumental to kicking this evaluation off. So why don't you guys take it away?
I'll start simply. Your advocates to support the change are yourself. It's your people. It's your reason for being when it comes to thinking about how you use technology to deliver service. It
can't be a solo mission, right? No. It really can't.
Not at all. Sean.
Yeah, and this gets me thinking, many of top leaders in our organizations have been a part of our organizations for a long time, and they're comfortable with what they know. And I think it's just a really great opportunity in terms of finding advocates at the top levels of your organization to help with future change management efforts, things that are really going to be connected, because it will forever be about people. There's no way around it. And so acknowledging that this change will also potentially be hard for top leaders, and to use this as an opportunity to educate, evangelize, work together to learn from each other internally. I would just add that, you really need those key contributors there.
Yeah.
I would add also that a project like this, or digital transformation in general, it's a change project. It's a change management project. At the end of the day, the technology components are not hard. They're actually pretty easy if they're well defined up front, through the needs of the people. But working with your teams as they, absorb, reject, accept, change, that's the really hard part. Here in San Diego, one of the ways we're going about that is that we actually have a strong external partner that is working with us. So, we needed someone to kind of be our advocate for change, and at the same time be kind of that third party, non-biased, supporter of where we wanted to go. And we actually are working with a consultant, to do that, because if you think about what it takes to change, to communicate change, prepare people for change, and all the communications associated with that, it's a hard thing to do alone. And you also have to remember, and as a longtime technologist, you have to accept that you can't be a prophet in your own land. You got to find people who can really be that bringer, of the change you want, through a voice that maybe isn't yours.
Change management, it's honestly one of the largest topics that we address with folks that are looking to make this leap, right? It's really hard. There's a lot of resistance around change, and not only change in technology, but maybe change in your business processes, right? So you guys will love this quote. Just because it made sense doesn't mean it makes sense, right? So identifying that things that you did prior to this, right, they might shift a little. They might change to actually fit better with the technology. And sometimes that doesn't sit well with people. That's the cold hard truth. And they're even more resistant. So I love that you've got a third party advocate advocate who's, non-biased, can look at the facts, can look at the data, and help be your champions in that.
Yeah, I think, and to that point, Stephanie, I think they've helped us make sure we connect all of our stakeholders throughout this project. And it's this iterative learning cycle, right? Where we're learning from departments themselves. Why do we do the things we do? And we ask some of those deeper questions. Sometimes they were just a byproduct of our current technology or system, or we've got massive assumptions throughout our operation. And when we use a third party to kind of come in and say, hey, wait, quick question. Why do you do it that way? And explain more. And there is a different way to get to the same outcome you're looking for. So to be agnostic a bit to your current state and to really just open the book up and say, what is truly creating business critical value for us in this process? It has been massively instructive for our entire team. I would argue in this change leadership effort, having partners like this, having leaders advocate for the change, it has caused a level of attention that our staff are so connected. They're getting stronger. I'm watching them every day as directors, as leaders, get stronger and stronger. Their business acumen's coming up, their ability to ask difficult questions. And frankly, it's that partnership cycle. But, our partner is getting better, TREC is getting better, we're getting better, and we're doing it all together.
That is so well said, Sean. I love that. I have to personally share that as I've watched our team, from day one, to where they are today, 63 days out from go live, I'm probably seeing our next generation of COOs and CEOs in the staff that are part of this. And I don't say that lightly. They are so engaged. They are so committed, so connected, and so thoughtful in how we think through process. Here in San Diego, again, a pain point is, 14 branches, 14 ways of doing stuff. And, part of what we're trying to change in this is how we can do it better, more efficient, the same. Can we, create things that are repeatable, so that we can get people, focused on mission quicker, using the tools to deliver mission instead of being caught up in this space where we have to do it all our own way. So.
Oh, upskilling. John, I already think of upskilling. I love that. That warms my heart that you've identified folks in your organization that are stepping up and stepping to the table because of this change, who are like, you're a thought leader, you're going to make some serious changes and moves in your career. And I love that, which actually bleeds perfectly into the second point here of identifying your internal stakeholders and who will own the tech. Hint, hint, upskilling, they're already in your organization. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you guys identified those individuals.
Yeah, there's kind of two pieces there. Let's, Sean, take the part on, how did we find our champions?
Yeah, so early on in the process, first of all, we had to be very clear and explicit in terms of our overarching identity objectives within the project, right? So going back to, we are building solutions for our people to delight our people. Okay, that means lots of different things to different individuals in our organization. So learning more about that, we first looked at major verticals, different departments that we wanted to make sure we had expertise represented in. So we found the best of the best within our organization to help speak to not only current state, but future state. They weighed in throughout the process. We democratized the input. We said, let's collaborate openly. Let's ask those questions openly. And we were looking for the individuals who would help us learn something new. So in terms of how you go after identifying those individuals, they're the people who are comfortable with discomfort, if this makes sense, because you're going to go through discomfort going through these sorts of changes. And they're going to ask those questions, they're going to lead, and they're going to see not Stephanie, I see you coming out of Vancouver, so I'm thinking of hockey analogies, but you hear the puck, you hit the puck where the player is skating, right? You've got to give the people who have that sort of vision a voice within your organization. If they see where the puck ought to go, then they're the people who need to be informing your changes within your technology.
I love that. And John and I were actually speaking a couple of days ago and this is kind of similar to that kind of stream of consciousness, but also more to the technology side of things, is also identifying technology that grows with you. I remember the CEO at Y San Francisco is, of course, you need to have the folks internally who are ready for the change and to grow with it, but you need to future-proof your organization, right? You need technology that is not going to stay stagnant with you. Similar to, you want those, identifying those stakeholders to stay stagnant. You want them to grow and see, where is the next big thing we're going to do? How can we innovate further? So on the same kind of line, a little bit off scale, but I love that.
No, I love that, Stephanie, because the reality is to Sean's point, we have a lot of Gretzky's here in San Diego, so that's actually really cool. But future-proofing your technology, that is actually something I believe that you can do. I mean, one would argue that you can't because technology needs to be swapped or changed every 3 to 5 years. It becomes outdated. But I think the reality is that there's lots of software and technology solutions that exist in this space. And I think that our reality is what we learned is a lot of those solutions are built for today or for yesterday. And what we really needed to look for is a solution is for where we wanted to be tomorrow. The why is asking itself, and I mean the why nationally is asking itself a lot of questions right now. What does membership look like, tomorrow? What does program delivery look like tomorrow? And I think that, the tech that we needed to reflect the place we want to go, even though we may not know today where that is. We needed flexibility. We had just run out of road with our very traditional solution. We were in a place where we couldn't deliver and be as nimble and as agile as we wanted to be. So again, we've got to kind of get prepared to skate to where the puck is.
Mm-hmm.
Which really kind of leads into that third bullet that was there about implementation. So
yes, indeed. Was there anything else you wanted to add around upskilling and the hint from my conversations with my JCCs is, we need to go hire a Salesforce administrator. We need to go hire a project manager.
No, upscaling, looking within so that you can find the people that'll lead you, out into the future. That's what we did here. I mean, Sean is a project manager on this project, but Sean is not a project manager by trade. That's not what he does. But Sean has a very unique, ability because he comes from the operations side. He's lived in a branch from the early days of a very entry-level program director. As an associate executive director, he's been in that space. So he brings a very unique skill set that I was able to tap internally, to help us, rally the team, to go where we wanted them to go. Salesforce admins, that's a great topic because every time somebody hears Salesforce, they see dollar signs on one side and they think of skill sets that maybe they don't have or they're going to have to buy. I know that, across the United States, IT at Wise is different. Not everybody has the same resources or assets, but we were able to internally kind of repurpose isn't the right word, but we had the team within our help desk team actually, who were very eager to learn. We set them on the right course to learning Salesforce administration. They've been a part of the project from the get-go. They're in every session. They're part of configuration. And out of that, we are building 2 Salesforce admins that are coming from within. And they're part of the data loads right now. They're part of all this really exciting stuff that as IT nerds makes them super, super happy. So their skills are going up. And they're coming from within because they have a very important component, that will help them be successful. They know our why. And I think that, again, finding skills and people that you may already have that can be a part of this journey is how you build for success.
Yeah. Well, especially as it relates to them knowing your day-to-day operations and how your business runs. Right? Hiring someone externally might be a little bit more challenging to not only bring them up to speed with, your history in the past and what you're driving towards and your goals, but also bring them up to speed on the technology, which can be really hard. So
one might argue that because our solution is actually Traction Rec, coupled with Salesforce or sitting on top of Salesforce, that there's an extra level of knowledge and understanding that has to exist. And that is really why operations. And again, we found, staff internally that have that. They have skills, they've lived in that space, they've supported, prior technology solutions and, prior operational platforms. So again, their skills have grown, they're supporting our why in a new way, they're excited and we'll be successful because of that.
Yeah, I love that. And going back to really quickly the notion of, Salesforce, super scary, big dollar sign attachment. I don't think people realize how accessible Salesforce is to nonprofits. I think that's the biggest thing is we're giving nonprofits this incredibly powerful technology that Fortune 500 companies are using. So there's a stigma attached to it that too scary, too complex, we can't do it. Where in actuality, if you look at this is essentially Salesforce for YMCAs, right? So a little bit more accessible.
It is. And I think the reality is that you have to, when eating elephant, bite at a time. I mean, that's how a project like this rolls out. If you try to come at a project like this, as a big bang, kind of a one shot and done, you'd be challenged, to have the time, to have the resources, and to have the dollars to do that successfully. You'd probably not do it in a way that would work really well. But here in San Diego, our approach, Sean, is it five tracks?
Yes,
I
5
think
tracks.
it's 5 total tracks. So when I say we're going live in 63 days, it's not we're going live and we're done. We're going live with what we are calling track A. So that's operations, membership program. So obviously big components of why work. But that's our first toehold right there. Then we have 4 other tracks that'll be comprised of things like case management, fundraising, virtual, and some other things. But you gotta have a good timeline, and you gotta have a phased approach, especially when you're working in the world of Salesforce, because it may feel daunting, but you can really package it in a way where you can be really successful in how you use it.
Totally. And we love the phased approach because I think it enables folks better and it gets their feet wet a little bit, fingers to keyboards. Okay, they're used to one piece of it. Then you go to the next. And it's kind of this process where they grow the confidence as the tracks go on. And then the great thing is when you're done those 4 tracks or 5 tracks, you're not going to be done. You're going to then think of things that you can now do after this project is done, right? Because you have the technology to support innovation and change, which is, I think, really cool. And, where you are today is going to be totally different than where you are in 5 years, but you've got technology to help support.
No, we got to build to be innovative. I mean, innovation is critical to where we're going to go tomorrow. So
totally. Really quickly, I saw Craig from St. Petersburg, YMCA, asked a question around, can you share some specific groups that you brought together? So those expert groups that you brought in the beginning of the evaluation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So we looked primarily at, first of all, our hierarchy. We wanted to get different levels of leadership within the hierarchy engaged very early on. So you're looking at executive levels, director, operator levels, and then even within those departments, different staff. So first I'll identify the what departments, and then maybe the why we chose who we chose. So in terms of which departments, we looked at starting with high revenue generating areas within our why, being conscious to the landscape of our why, looking at high volume opportunities, the areas that would be most affected by the ultimate change. So things like membership, we have large gymnastics programs here, we have aquatics leadership, and we have what we call collaborative groups. So each department has a collaborative lead. And in many cases, we tapped those people to help us in terms of getting engaged. We had fundraising staff. So as we talk about each track, by the way, there are some massive stakeholders involved in each one of the tracks of our implementation. So we made sure that we included them. For example, fundraising development is going to be later, but we've definitely included that group throughout the change process. Lots of different sports, youth type programming, childcare in particular in San Diego County is a huge lift. So we really thought consciously about what departments were most business critical to have representation for. So we started there. Then after crafting out that sort of menu of people we wanted to identify, the coolest thing started happening. People started hearing about this change that was coming. And we started having leaders that organically and on their own volition came to us and said, how can I get involved? Or I'm interested. Or they would ask really insightful questions. And I know in terms of how we identified our talent that we wanted to bring along, sometimes you look at the hierarchy, but you can't just look at the hierarchy. You really got to listen for those people who care tremendously about the change ahead. And they're going to, I guarantee, unearth gems for you as you move forward in your efforts. So those experts were found and identified after we saw the sort of organic motivation coming through. We would invite some of them to a session, and next thing you know, they're helping drive forward efforts. One really thing, and I'm actually going to lift up John for this skill, which is let your people drive the change. You don't necessarily need to micromanage or control. You need to find those experts who will do it well for you and then support them in the process. Ask those questions to get them thinking about what's really important, and they will bring the solutions to you. So I wanted to add that on there because that is part of the, how you identify your SMEs and the people you want engaged in the project. Find those people with those skill sets is what I would recommend prioritizing.
That's awesome, Sean. The reality is that our project continues to kind of expand and contract. So we have a small core team that are primarily made up of operational experts, or those SMEs that Sean's talking about, people from membership, people from program. And we have regular continuous meetings as a core group. But then as we go through design sessions, it's who else are we bringing in? And just like in the social media world, look for your influencers. We have a lot of influencers. We have a lot of people with ideas, and those are the folks you really want to capture and really bring to the table.
I love that. We call them accidental admins in some of our world, but they're more technical. But yours are accidental champions. Like, you kind of identified this, but then all of a sudden they're driving change. You give trust in them and you let them run with it. And then all of a sudden that they're innovating.
Well, and we also built a Change Champion Network, or the CCN as we call it. And this is a group of hand-selected individuals that help us carry the message. You know, they're the apostles, you know, they're the evangelists. They're the ones that, and again, yeah, there's a couple of IT people in there who like to talk a lot like me, but they're, you know, these are our team members at large that, you know, we're doing it for them. They're taking it to their team, and it just, you know, and then they told two friends and they told two friends, and that's how we're driving it out through the organization.
And John, I would love to make a quick comment on that too. I think that Change Network and some of the efforts we put forward, I can't express this enough. As much as the IT people give us wonderful insights, they listened. They've been listening throughout. The gymnastics team is developing the gymnastics process, and IT is sitting there and listening. And they're not judging or asking forward questions to say, why in the world would you even consider that? Why would that be important? They're just listening and assessing and taking that. And that's the brilliance of John's team in this implementation, is that they are the people helping enable what people in our organization are asking for. It's not they're providing a solution saying, I hope this works, I hope this fits. One thing I also want to acknowledge, one of the bullet points that I think were up there earlier, is making the time and space. And it's through these efforts that you make the time and space for your team. Now, initially in the project, two things happened. One, a staff would say, oh no, I've got my day job, I'm a little bit too busy. Right? And so they said, why would I make time for something that's going to happen 10 months down the line? I don't see the connection. My day job is at the branch. I report to somebody else. The old question, WIFM, what's in it for me? Right? And so it's this speculative academic thing early on to your staff. And so how do you make the time and space? You engage them in the change efforts early on. And the second thing that happened, and it was a revelation, at first staff were sitting in these sessions and they didn't know they had permission to talk. You know, it's naturally, wait, I thought this was a technology meeting. Here's the thing that's happening now is they won't stop talking, and it's great. We're hearing them 45, 50, 70 minutes into sessions, still engaging with the TREC enablement teams and asking, would this be possible? What do you think? It's amazing to see that change happen. And it started with people, and it's driving through even to current state with 63 days to go. The challenge underlying a lot of this is, does your organization make the time and space? Will you consciously acknowledge the level of effort that's going to be required? And dare I say, I had a staff who used to say we put the Y in yes. Do we have the ability to prioritize and look at what is most meaningful for this organization? And I would challenge organizations to find a more meaningful use of their time. This is planning for 30 years to come. And this is the meaningful work, and we're engaging the teams in that now. So make the time now so that you can create more of that time later.
You know, the technologist in me knows that digital transformation and major technology shifts often fail because you don't get your people engaged, because you don't make it about the people. I mean, and I can't say that enough. I mean, our success will be because we made it about the people. I think that, you know, when I think about all the configuration sessions driven by our staff teams, I mean, Sean, as we went through configuration, as we came to a decision point and decisions were made, and we actually have a very strong decision-making structure, which is maybe a webinar for another time, but we've only had to reopen, what, 4, 5 decisions? And there's been 65 different decisions. I mean, significant operational, organizational configuration decisions. And I attribute that to the fact that the people made the decisions. Now, every once in a while, something sneaks in that's a little interesting, and we have to kind of unpack it, but we've only had to reopen 5, 6.
A handful of them. And I would say one of them, we had to use executive authorization to kind of override a decision. Overall, yeah, you know, these things happen, and that's part of the learning process. But when we're in college and you get 64 out of 65, that's an A, right? So we'll take it. And in this case, I think the teams are getting engaged in those decisions. I think behind every number as an analyst, I'll tell you there's always a story. So the story behind all those decisions is that's not easy to get to. As you can imagine in your organization, you may have some strong-willed individuals who see the same thing two different ways. Every day we see that. Every day we're getting that sort of input. But the brilliance in this is challenging the group intentionally to say, here's where we need to go. We need an aligned process. You all can get together and work through that natural logical conflict you may have. But I would argue we're making these decisions at an exponential rate with comparison to the past, because there is this sense of urgency to launch. And there is this sort of push that's natural to the team to say, let's get this right and let's do it now. And so I've seen our effectiveness, even leading into this, as decision makers increase in terms of time and in terms of the effectiveness of the decision itself.
Exactly. Because the people are deciding, a subtle change that I'm seeing, I think Sean is probably seeing it too, and I think it will grow over time, is people are starting to shift from this is what my branch does to this is what my Y does. Meaning this is what our organization does. I mean, we have a long ways to go, because that's a muscle we're going to have to keep flexing and keep working on. But I see it coming. I've seen it. I've seen the change over the last year, and if we can keep that going, coupled with the governance we're going to set up as we kind of move to the other side of our first go live, and how we manage change through really good governance. I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean, we'll finally be one Y in how we operate from a business perspective.
People, process, technology, right? This is what it all comes down to.
Yeah, well, people, process, culture, technology. I think you got to add that culture component in there, because if you forget culture, I mean, it will eat you alive. I don't know. That's somebody's quote. Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast. That's a Drucker quote. Yeah.
There you go. Amazing. So we talked a lot about investing in time, being prepared to invest in time. That is the biggest thing. We also had a key point of have awareness of your data. So before we get to these key factors, I think we always talk about data as being obviously one of the riskiest parts of the project, right? And one of the biggest things to consider when going into this. Any tips and tricks for data integrity to the folks on the line, and how you prepared for that?
Yeah, there's so much we could say, but just in the interest of being concise and pointed here, I think data in your current state, when moving into a new system, it's not going to align naturally. So I think the one visionary statement that we've looked at there is, let's build the data for a contact or a customer and build this massive horizontal table of things about each person. Put the person first. And a lot of more antiquated systems architectures, you see there's a membership file and a program file and a financial one. And really for us, we've been prioritizing data and attaching it to the process, the business process work we're doing. The data is only as good as that process that you build and the adherence to that process. So really prioritizing what is the experience for the staff and the customer, how do we set them up for an A to not only enter new information in a streamlined and effective way, but then how can we align our existing state data migration to match that? And we've been seeing a lot of forward progress in that space.
Yeah, I think on the data front also, it's so critical that internally that you have awareness. You really need to know where your data live, how you're going to move this data into the new system. You need to think in terms of hygiene, to think about it, maybe more on the technical side. But the other really important component of data is you need to think about what you want for your future state. Kind of what Sean was referring to. For us, at the very tip of the spear is one customer, one record. That's what we want to get to. We're not there yet, but we also need to have a solution and processes in place that actually support that. So that's where we want to go. The other thing that's really important for us from a data perspective is how do we get to 360? We want to be able to see kind of all the way around our customer. That's a really critical component. But to also do that, how do we take this solution as we kind of start small on the traditional operations side of our Y and really build it out around the organization to encompass all aspects of our business? We have a very large portion of the business that's focused on social services. And we want to bring that into the fold too. So you got to have really good directionality and envision for where you want to go with data.
Love that. I could talk about data forever as well. It's one of the biggest things that we talk about with our customers.
That's Sean's specialty. He is a data dude.
You were the only customer who's like, I don't want to bring over 30 years of historical data. You're the only one who said that. But it's because you had these kind of factors in mind when approaching data. So I love that.
There's no value.
No value. All right. So, Sean, what key factors should one consider when taking this leap of faith to move to Salesforce Interaction Rec and make a change just in general?
Yeah, absolutely. And oh my goodness, so many factors could come to mind, right? So we're looking to distill this down to 5 simple ones for the group today. And as John was saying, there's so many other webinars we could jump into on each one of these potentially. But I want to express just being attached to our vision, the statements around putting people first, delighting our staff. Usability of the system was the most business critical item for us. We wanted to make sure we put that first, and looking at both lenses, internal staff, internal customers, and external customers. And as we were assessing different solutions that were out there in the ecosystem, we really prioritized that. And it actually relates to the data, right? As the better usable it is, the better hygiene you get from the data, and the better connected it is across your various platforms and applications. So really looking at that feel, streamlining the experience, putting our customer first. Then taking the portability of that data, knowing that if your Y or your organization is anything like ours, you had data in lots of disparate places, as John was talking, and you say, okay, how do I really bring data in and move data across all these different platforms that we're using, right? So even if it is through a third-party integration, whatever it is you need to develop, as long as to the customer and to the staff, it feels streamlined, and it's something that we can rely on in terms of the integrity of the data across different sources, it's really valuable for us. The other thing, speaking of APIs, is stackability, being able to create this sort of tech stack where we know that the best in breed in all these different areas is being represented. So we think of nonprofit success pack and different components within TREC, as well as their potential to integrate along with other systems. Like we currently use a platform called Classy. So an example of many things that we can do to build together as time moves on. You've heard a lot about this idea of current state and future state as well. So stackability enables us to be agile. It enables us to think about things differently. And we know that while we're 63 days away from go live now, this will put us in position to learn. We know we're going to learn something after we go live. What that is, the scale of it, the magnitude, this stackability component helps us assess the validity of each one of those choices we've made. Scalability. We plan on continuing to grow as a Y. We know we have high volume. We know that we're going to want to move into a digital space. And so when I think of scale in this particular use case, I would look at how widely can we reach out? What is the true digital transformation effort yielding, and how can we reach out further? So lots of opportunity for us there based on current state versus the future state. And then there's this idea, I think at the beginning of this call, we talked about partnership, right? And so this came through in vendor assessments as we went through the process. Not only the technical adaptability, but I would link that to the willingness to partner and adapt. And even this morning, we came off a session with TREC where we're coming up with something called Einstein AI, and that they're open to partnering with us and working together to figure out really wonderful ways to predict certain things within our business. It's really critical for our why, and it was a part of our how we measured each one of our vendors moving forward.
Yeah, you know what I would add to that is actually, as you look to your partners, look at their personality. That's a really important component. And also look, do you have common goals? I mean, if personality and goals can be aligned with where you want to go with your partners, I mean, your potential for success is huge. I would just throw in a little bit on the stackability, or really just the ability to leverage, other solutions. I mean, that's what the future looks like. Looking to platforms that try to be, a Swiss Army knife, that's maybe not ever, you can't add the next thing onto the knife. So we really need to have a solution for us that will continue to grow. If you look at the Salesforce, App Exchange, it is flush with potential solutions that I'm already seeing today for things that I'd like to do in the future. Especially in the social services space, how we can do case management for social services, how we can, do that work, HIPAA compliant. There's so many cool things out there. And again, I can't stress enough, build for tomorrow, make your decisions and your selection based on who you want to be tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Stackability and integration 100% go hand in hand. And this notion of a one solution fits all versus let's just connect the ones and connect the tools that are best in class, right?
Absolutely.
And back to your partnership note, your organization was one of the few that actually in their scoring criteria, quote unquote, really put an emphasis on partnership, culture, values alignment. And coming from an organization like Traction Rec, where we are so values focused, and it was just so refreshing for you all to actually have that as part of your evaluation. So I just want to make a side note that we really appreciated that. And that came through, 100% in your evaluation. So
well, I think also something to that point, when we came up with what our evaluation would look like, how we were going to evaluate those kind of final top 5 vendors. I mean, we really managed that because we set the stage for vendors to respond to us in the way we do business, and I think that was really critical. So Sean had come up with our personas. So all of the vendors, as you recall, they had to show their solutions based on personas that we had actually pre-shared. So it was really pretty cool.
I love that. Before we get to the slide, I know Beth is eager to know about a little bit more about what your kind of project entails. So right now, Beth at St. Pete, they're using just Salesforce lead management. That was kind of their first step in their Salesforce transformation. So Beth, the team at San Diego, they're in the transition of using Salesforce and Traction Rec for full CRM. So not just lead management like you, that's part of their overall, project of one of 5 tracks. So they will soon be live with track A, which is just Traction Rec. And then we'll continue to evolve throughout the rest. Beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about the actual process of the evaluation and this lovely tool that we got to use with y'all, and how you kind of went about this is awesome. Sean, I'll let you take this away.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And I know we're coming up on time, so I'll try to move swiftly through these. But I'll tell you, this was, it's easy to get intimidated early on, right? I'm going to throw some numbers at you, and they're big numbers, but the most important thing here was the process and engaging our people. So what we did here is we created those personas, as John was talking about. We did technical elaborations with each one of the vendors, and then we got relatively large groups, couple dozen people, to help us assess each vendor based on their performance, their answers, etc. And we in a short way crowdsourced a lot of our input here. So we looked at 37 total vendors. One thing I want to put out there, we were not shy. We put in 162 requirements for our vendors. We deserve it, our staff deserve it, and they wanted certain things. So we made sure we asked them and were explicit as far as our needs, our mission, our values, and we were clear about our strategic identity moving forward. And then they all went through. Going through that process, we ended up with a list of 4 shortlisted vendors. So it was a very competitive process here. Staff were able to go one by one through their assessments of whether or not a certain vendor had matched to the level that they were looking for. So this, again, was not controlled by the association office, or this was organic input given to us in carefully constructed requirements. Just want to call out, we did get a lot of support from our partner here as well to make sure that we were being as unbiased as possible and really doing a good job looking at the overall landscape that we needed to for these massive implementation efforts we had ahead.
I think it's also really important to call out is that, even before we got to those 37 vendors, we did deep business process discovery internally. We looked at ourselves, we evaluated our process, we captured our process. We knew that these processes needed to change, and then we took that change and we tied it to requirements. So I think that it's really critical to look within. I mean, don't ever lead with a solution. Don't ever say, look, I need this technology, or I need this vendor, I need this partner. Look at yourself, capture how you do business, capture the pain points of your business, and then build your strategy and your project against that work, to get to eventual RFP and selection.
Oh, John, something we didn't talk too much in detail about, but again, could be another webinar, is lead with the problem, not the solution. That
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
always start with the business problem. Never start with the solution you think you need for the problem. Unpack that first.
And that carried through in our staff, right? Our staff will also come back and say, oh, I found this great thing online that'll do this for it. And it's really slowing down and making sure we're asking those questions. So team, wanted to just share a very shortened view of the readout we got after going through our final elaborations with the final 4 vendors. As Stephanie alluded to, culture fit was important to us. The capabilities of the technology, and you'll see again, user experience 35%. We really prioritize that. And after going through all these massive inputs, doing qualitative and quantitative assessments, talking to people, getting re-inputs, these were the scores that we ultimately were giving to each one of our vendors. And statistically, it was significant enough that we could move forward with the decision.
Wild, from 37 to 4, what a process. And down to 1.
And
yes.
And then down to 1. Amazing.
So here is just a sample readout of one of the vendor scores and looking at, one respondent saying, I don't feel like they answered our questions. This goes back to the people component of any project. If you hear phrases like that's in development, that's in our strategic framework for 10 years from now, I say this lovingly, they may not be able to actually assist you. And that was sort of the feeling that we got from some of the responses that you'll hear. If it doesn't exist in current state, be bold. If that's what you require, make sure you're clear about those needs. So that was one thing that we saw there on the one vendor, whereas we also saw from our business center of all places, people feeling connected to the values. I recall from their initial presentation that T-Rec put their values at the very beginning of their presentation, and they prioritized it much like we would. And in addition to that, you see all this blue here on this chart. This is showing the compatibility with everything we were looking for, with most answers being in that 5 category, looking at really excellent adherence to what we were looking for. So we took a scientific approach to being able to break down each one of these. These are slides that were shared internally with our top leadership to help us make this decision. This isn't the whole Megillah, but it's a part of it. And for you all, hopefully that process will give you some value as well.
Amazing. Oh, another webinar we could do, executive buy-in and leadership buy-in and internal selling. And there's so much that goes into this.
Absolutely.
John, we're going to wait for John's book that he writes when he's done the project.
We've got a whole book series. Actually, Sean and I have been,
we've been tinkering.
Have you?
Tinkering.
Interesting. I'll be the first person to buy that book.
Nice.
Wow, our timing was quite impeccable. We've got a minute left. If anyone has any last minute questions, please come off mute if you'd like. John, Sean, I know you're probably open to discussing and communicating with folks after this if they want to reach out with anything specific. Craig will buy the book and then yes, Craig. Sean, John, if I can connect them with your email address later on.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Tom Gardner, Mr. Tom, you have a question.
Hey, Tom.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Tom.
And in the 30 seconds that are left, thank you for just a wonderful overview of your process. And love the way, key takeaways, it's about people, it's about process, it's about understanding the influencers and working with that. And I had a bunch of questions in that area that I was going to ask, but you already answered them all. But I'm wondering, and this is probably not going to be a short answer, but thinking about data, right? In my experience, when you get to reference tables, things like membership types, that can get really passionate too. Right. So what was it like, as you got the group to go through those moments with an eye towards simplification and efficiency? And like in general, John, like how long, is the phase 1 data effort been? How many spins? Like, what should we expect when we're taking this on ourselves?
That is an awesome question, Tom. Let me start with, how do you get to alignment? I think that one of the good things, to our advantage here in San Diego is that a lot of work had been going on over the past 6, 7, 8 years, to really focus on where we could, standardize things like membership and program. And actually membership for us was pretty standardized. There were a lot of things around that we could, really, tweak in a way where it wasn't such a heavy lift. I think that a lot of the change for us is really in the program space. So there was a lot of work and effort to really focus there. I remember, the traction rec team tell us that, if the program or if the project will be at risk if you can't get alignment around program. Program will be, that's one of the big pain points right there. As far as like data spins, I'm trying to think how many loads we've already done, but we have an awesome, data team led by our IT manager, Emilio Alvarez, and then, our group of future systems admins here inside the Y. They're working with our external partner and with TREC. And I think we've got all of our membership types loaded at this point. And, they went through, 4 or 5 iterations, small batch, small sample, kind of leading up to, much larger loads. I think that team has the majority of our programs loaded. And again, that was kind of the same way, small, kind of medium, large. We kind of spun it up and did multiples there. And as we are here in this kind of 63-day home stretch, we're looking at kind of those final loads now, kind of, how we get to production. But we've built a lot of templates. We've created a lot of process internally for how the data is coming out of our current system and then moving across. But it's absolutely a heavy lift, and we can talk more about that.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Dom. Beautiful. If anyone else wants to come off mute, I know we're a couple minutes over time, but again, I could stay on this webinar all day long. So. All good. All right. I think we're good for questions. John, Sean, thank you again so much for your time in the midst of the chaos of your world right now. We very much appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for joining. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. And folks who asked to be connected directly with the San Diego individuals, I will make that introduction.
So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.